Hello, I'm James Ezimoha. Welcome to African News, where we bring you the latest updates from across the African continent. Let's see your headlines. Dozens of Kenyans rescued from scam job compounds abroad return home. Hundreds of Tunisian students protest in Tunis, demand urgent aid access to Gaza. South Africa's auto industry under pressure after steep U.S. import tariff. Thank you for joining us. We begin in Tunisia, where hundreds of students rallied in Tunis on Monday, demanding urgent aid access to Gaza. They called out the silence of Arab and global leaders as the war's toll continues to climb.
Students filled Habib Bourguiba Avenue in central Tunis, waving Palestinian flags and chanting solidarity slogans on Monday. The demonstration was part of a global call to action in support of Palestinians in Gaza. The protest comes as Israel's offensive continues following the Hamas-led October 7th attack, which killed around 1,200 people, according to Israeli sources. Gaza health authorities say over 50,000 Palestinians have been killed since then. Protesters say their message is aimed at the world's silence and inaction.
Today's event came in response to the general call to action issued by Hamas to say to the world, today enough, enough silence, enough submission.
He added that their top demand is for humanitarian aid to reach Gaza without delay.
Our demands today are to open the borders, allow the entry of aid, and break this Arab and global silence to condemn the brutal aggression of the illegitimate entity that has crossed all red lines of the universal values and principles.
The students say they'll keep protesting until Gaza sees relief. The Tunis rally joins a wave of global demonstrations demanding urgent action as the war enters its 6th month.
After months of tension, France and Algeria have resumed diplomatic talks. French Foreign Minister Jean-Noël Barrot met with his Algerian counterpart Ahmed Attaf in Algiers on Sunday, aiming to rebuild strained relations. It's after months of stalemate, which has hurt Paris's economic security interests in its former colony.
France and Algeria ties are back to normal. That's according to Paris after French Foreign Minister Jean-Noël Barrot met his Algerian counterpart Ahmed Attaf in Algiers on Sunday. The meeting follows a phone call between the leaders of both countries back in March, during which they agreed on a roadmap to stabilise ties. This follows earlier attempts in 2022 to reset relations through cooperation protocols. It marks the restart of diplomatic talks between the two countries after months of tension. The rift deepened last year when French President Emmanuel Macron supported Morocco's autonomy plan for Western Sahara, angering Algeria. Since the summer, trade between the two nations has dropped by 30%, with French officials saying that Algiers adopted a policy that aimed to wipe France's economic presence from the country. The situation worsened when Franco-Algerian author Boualem Sansal was detained by Algerian authorities last November and later sentenced to 5 years in prison. Diplomats say that Paris hopes he will be given a presidential pardon. The relationship between the two countries is scarred by the trauma of the 1954 to 1962 war, in which the North African country, which had a large settler population and was treated as an integral part of France under colonial rule, won independence.
A delegation of officials from the Democratic Republic of Congo has begun negotiations with the M23 rebels to end the devastating conflict in the country's east. The talks, mediated by the Emir of Qatar, comes after years of violence that has claimed thousands of lives. Our correspondent Chris Ocharimga reports from Kinshasa.
Congolese officials and representatives of the M23 rebel group held their first direct talks in Qatar, marking a critical step to potential peace. An official who attended the discussions described the meeting as a trust-building breakthrough after years of fighting. Another round of negotiations is set for April 9th in Doha. The M23 rebels are largely ethnic Tutsis living in the east of the DRC. They accuse the DRC government of violating a peace deal they signed in 2013 and marginalizing their community. But Kinshasa denies the claims, instead accusing Rwanda of supporting the rebels to plunder its minerals, an allegation Kigali rejects. The M23 have captured several territories in North and South Kivu province, displacing thousands. The United Nations and the African Union are pushing both sides to pursue a peaceful resolution. Chris Suchamringa, A News, Kinshasa.
Still in Congo, severe flooding has struck Kinshasa on Sunday. Residents say the water rose quickly, catching many off guard. The death toll has risen to at least 30, according to latest reports from local authorities.
At least 30 people have been confirmed dead by local authorities in Congo's capital, Kinshasa, following heavy rains on Sunday. The city's first major flood of the year left homes and streets underwater after heavy rains overnight. With a population of more than 12 million, Kinshasa is highly vulnerable during the rainy season, especially in low-lying areas with limited drainage. Residents say the rising water destroyed their source of livelihood and left others scrambling to save what they could.
The rising waters began slowly around 1400 hours yesterday. We first started by trying to organise our belongings, hoping the water would stop, but unfortunately it kept rising, and we were forced to try to save some merchandise, but it was complicated. We lost a lot of our goods. And many other people also lost almost all of their belongings.
Similar disasters in past years have drawn calls for urgent investment in the city's drainage systems. 150 people died in 2022 due to flooding and landslides in the region.
South Africa's auto industry is under pressure after a steep U.S. import tariff threatens key exports. As the sector braces for impact, officials are calling for calm and diplomacy.
South African car makers are scrambling after Washington announced a 25% tariff on all foreign-built vehicles entering the US. The move has raised alarm bells for global manufacturers like BMW, Mercedes and Ford, which use South Africa as a key export base. The tariffs jeopardize South Africa's duty-free access under the African Growth and Opportunity Act. With exports making up the majority of local production, the policy shift could destabilize an industry that supports thousands of jobs and contributes 5% to the country's GDP. Representatives from the automotive sector say the new policy directly threatens companies that rely on South Africa to supply vehicles to international markets.
If you take, for an example, BMW, 97% of the X3 that we're producing in Roslyn is exported out of the country. We only sell 3% in South Africa. There's a huge number of those vehicles that also goes into the US. So, there are companies in South Africa that are purely here, not because they're selling vehicles in South Africa. They are here to produce vehicles for the global market. And it's important for them to remain globally competitive.
South African officials acknowledge the damage, but say they will not retaliate, warning that smaller economies will suffer the most.
We produce less than 1% of global automotive vehicles, so to say. So in reality, the impact on us is likely to be more disproportionate, and those of our peers that produce at the same level. And the risk is actually creating a concentration risk in countries that have greater capacity and are building more, and those countries would be able to absorb some of this.
The new tariff regime is set to take effect in days. As Pretoria pushes for exemptions through diplomatic channels, the future of South Africa's auto exports to the US remains uncertain.
Dozens of Kenyans rescued from scam job compounds near the Thai-Myanmar border have arrived home. Many describe abuse as the government steps up efforts to investigate and repatriate victims.
A group of Kenyans landed at Nairobi's Jomo Kenyatta International Airport on Saturday after being rescued from job scammers operating near the Thai-Myanmar border. This follows the government's effort to export labour in a bid to tackle its growing unemployment in the country of 55 million people. Some of the survivors say they were lured by promises of legitimate jobs, only to end up in brutal conditions. They say they were tortured, detained and coerced into online scams.
I have witnessed many people being tortured by French. I have witnessed. We have lost many people there. We are told that huyu hazipatikana tena. Yeah, because umevunja sheria. Unaambiwa huyu hamtamwona tena. Which is very true. Yeah. I am a chef. That is the job I was promised I'm going to do in Thailand. But I found myself doing a scamming job, fake job, kazi hewa. So we have been hurt emotionally, physically.
Kenyan officials say the situation highlights a growing crisis, linking human trafficking to deceptive overseas job offers.
Under the guise of labour mobility, we have had a rise in human trafficking, where we have seen many Kenyans promised or lured into job opportunities that don't exist and end up finding themselves in scam compounds such as the ones I have described here, or in commercial sex work or other kinds of forced or slavery conditions, instead of going for the jobs that they thought they were going for.
The returnees underwent clearance procedures at the airport. They're expected to provide statements to the Directorate of Criminal Investigations detailing their experiences, according to government officials. This repatriation follows the return of 48 Kenyans from the same border 2 weeks ago.
Mali's art community gathered in Bamako on Sunday to honor Amadou Bagayoko of the famed duo Amadou and Miriam. The Grammy-nominated musician died on Friday, aged 70.
In Bamako, musicians, actors and religious leaders came together to pay their final respects to Amadou Bagayoko, a legendary figure in Malian music who passed away on Friday. Bagayoko, one half of the internationally acclaimed duo Amadou and Mariam, was best known for fusing traditional Malian music with global styles. His work brought West African culture to global stages for decades. Their 2008 album, Welcome to Mali, was nominated for Best Contemporary World Music Album at the Grammys. Renowned Malian singer Salif Keita and other cultural figures described Bagayoko's death as a deep loss for the country and the continent.
When God wills, man proposes and God disposes. It's a great loss. He will remain in people's hearts forever.
Malian culture is in mourning today because we've just lost someone who truly showcased the richness of Malian, I'd even say African, culture. So, for Amadou and Mariam, one thing is certain: history will never forget them.
Bagayoko's passing marks the end of an era in Malian music, but his legacy, built on melody, resilience and cultural pride, lives on through decades of performances and global acclaim.
Well, that's all we have today in African News. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned to A News.